Welcome back to the CTO Playbook, the podcast dedicated to helping CTOs excel. What if your most powerful leadership skill had nothing to do with code, process, or product, but everything to do with how people feel? In this episode, I'm speaking with Wesley Eugene, SVP at HIT Global and former CIO at IDEO, about the human-first principles that great tech leaders embody. From designing trust into transformation to telling better stories with data, Wesley shares a playbook for leading with empathy and impact. This conversation might just change how you lead and how your team feels about being led. I'm your host, Adam Horner. As a coach, I help CTOs from startups to enterprises to lead with clarity, confidence, and strategic impact. And before we get into human-centric leadership, I want to share something I've built to help you on your leadership journey. If you've ever felt like there's a missing handbook for being a CTO, then you're not alone. I've been there too. And I hear it every week from the CTOs and tech leaders I coach. That's why I created this podcast and have been publishing episodes for over a year. Because technology leadership is challenging, and figuring it all out alone makes it even harder. The CTO Playbook is now a home for this podcast, a growing community of CTOs, and a suite of coaching programs, all designed to help you grow as a technology leader. Think of your technology leadership journey as a mountain, a climb with many routes up. CTO Basecamp helps you build breadth and clarity into your role. CTO Elevate sharpens your strategic impact. And CTO Ascent, that's a path you can take anytime. It's your personalized coaching journey designed around your specific needs, whether you're just starting out or already leading at the highest level. Your path, your pace, your playbook. If you're ready to stop figuring it all out the hard way and start leading with clarity, confidence, and a strategic impact that your organization deserves, sign up for the first few cohorts is now open. You can learn more about CTO Basecamp, CTO Ascent, and what's coming in the near future with CTO Elevate at thectoplaybook.com. Talking of playbooks, Wesley has a great one for you today. Wesley, welcome to the CTO Playbook podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Adam. I'm excited about being on this pod.
I'm looking forward to this. And I've always wanted to find out a little bit about what it is you do. So just for our listeners, just to put it into context, can you just give a very quick, brief outline of what it is that you do, Wesley?
Yeah, well, I spread love, happiness, and joy through the world of technology. More specifically, I am a SVP for an organization called HIT Global. And what HIT Global is a training and consulting organization that has brought forth one of the world's first experience management frameworks. So we'll get into a little bit about what that is. And what led me there to jump and take a chance with a startup is that I had a brilliant journey with being the partner and chief information officer for IDEO, which is one of the world's leading design firms who can honestly quote like Steve Jobs was client number one. And so lots of exciting stories there, an amazing and dynamic place to be. And I won't step on the story too much, Adam, but all of that led us to where we are today.
And leading us to where we are today is exactly what I'd like to do. I'd love to wind the clock a little bit back and ask you, how did you get into technology in the first place? I mean, what was the first sort of tech thing that drove you towards, hey, this is where I want to work?
Serendipity is a thing, right? So I'm a son of immigrants. My parents immigrated from Haiti back in the 70s. And as many immigrant folks know, it's like your parents are very focused on you being as excellent, like fulfilling the American dream and all of that. But at the same time, resources are scarce. And so
Right.
I had to work my way through college, but I knew if I didn't get a degree, my parents would probably disown me. And working my way through college, what I actually did, Adam, was I used to start off building computers, and I started doing level 1, level 2 desk side support and working the service desk. Like those were the entry level roles that I did part time to pay my way through college.
Right. That's interesting because the service desk is quite literally helping people out. It's the human level interaction between people and their technology, essentially at that stage of helping folks out.
That's true. And, a quiet little secret is it doesn't really matter. Once you start the service desk, if you're the technologist in your family, you'll know that you're always the service desk, no matter what role you move to. So like even as CIO and partner at IDEO, I was still level 1 support service desk for my family.
Yeah, I think I still am for the whole of my family now. It's one of those universal things of working in IT. You're the technologist, you know this stuff. You've got to help me out with this. It happens to us all the time. Yeah, and I love
Exactly.
this idea of working in customer service desk. I actually did that for a short amount of time as well when I first joined a Barclays Bank, where I worked as my first role out of university. And that was where I learned the rather inglorious phrase that people use there. It definitely wasn't the human-centered approach to it. They used to say, yep, we've got a picnic problem here. And I learned a little bit later on what that meant was problem in chair, not in computer. So already from that stage, you got this understanding of sometimes you've got to help the people, not necessarily just the technology. But enough about me. Let's go on from there. So so you got into service desk there. You sort of fell into technology. What was the journey from there to being this influential position at IDEO then?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. There's a saying that luck is preparation meeting opportunity. I would add a little bit of hunger to that too.
Yeah.
And in my journey, what happened was when I was graduating from University of Florida, I was interviewing for a bunch of different companies, and one of those companies in particular was a company called Capgemini. They're well known in management consulting circles, and I was able to win a position with Capgemini as a management consultant graduating from University of Florida by actually selling. Like, I was a business major,
Right.
but all my work study had been in CIS or in computers or computers technical support. And I sold myself as the bridge between the business and IT. That's how I sold myself. At the time, quite honestly, I didn't even fully understand or comprehend the definition of a business analyst
Yeah.
at all. But I just sold myself that way and it worked. And so from there, I had a fantastic journey with Capgemini. I love my consulting days. I'm very thankful for them because they really gave me my first playbook, to be honest, when it comes to understanding landing in a context and environment, understanding your environment, understanding the people whom you need to help, and then being very wildly curious about their needs. Like, that became something that I just built upon throughout my journey. From CAP, I had opportunities to continue in like financial services, this stint at Equifax, this stint some insurance companies as well, and then ultimately landed at Aflac. So
Right.
Aflac is known the world over for the cool little duck that walks around saying Aflac, Aflac instead of quacking.
Yeah.
And I there had the good fortune ultimately to get promoted to the position of chief of staff to the CIO. And when I was there, I was able to actually drive digital transformation strategy. I laid forth the architecture and and designed what we later called Aflac Digital University, which is where we led a very significant workforce reskilling program. I was very fortunate in my timing there because I was able to play an integral role in designing our DevSecOps tool chain. And
Right.
I was also able at that time to really mature service management for the organization. It was a remarkable journey, and that led me ultimately to an opportunity with Anthem, and then further on, an opportunity with another company called R1RCM, which is a leading technology company in the healthcare space, specifically revenue cycle management.
Right.
And that company, for example, Adam, was my pandemic company. So
Okay. Right.
I had the opportunity there. My first day was like the first week of March 2020. So before the month was over, we all thought the world was ending,
What
right?
a time to move into health tech, right?
Yeah, incredible. And I had to shift 20,000 people, 14,000 of which were in India, from working in our highly regulated call centers and operation centers and hospital environments to working from home, and do that securely and still manage to remain compliant with HIPAA standards and all kinds of things as we're serving all these hospital systems. I would not recommend that anybody voluntarily do something like that, but there was an incredible learning experience. I was able to do that through, again, another thing I like to bring forth into the way I operate is I was only able to do that because I had developed trust I had a trusted partner, a friend actually, who started out as just a service provider or vendor, and that on a letter of understanding and a handshake with mask on, of course, I was able to facilitate and move millions of dollars of resources across India with the power of that friendship and that trust. And so when people actually, we often get lost in this world of technology thinking that, the latest technology craze is going to save us all. The truth is relationships always matter. And what made the difference there was that I didn't burn bridges. I had developed and invested in real relationships with real people who knew that my word meant something and their word meant something to me. Without that, we would have been in a very precarious situation during the pandemic because our primary partners were really trying to keep their heads above water and weren't able to meet our needs. So I love telling that story because the power of trust, the power of relationships, it really is a significant part of what keeps me successful.
Absolutely. And then to call it just a handshake is to kind of to minimize it quite significantly, isn't it? Because it's not just a handshake, it's full trust, as you said. It's built up over time, experience and work. I mean, and you mentioned there being fortunate multiple times, but it seems to me that you've also been working pretty hard through that whole time as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the things that, so I remained very curious. Learning, anybody who's in technology is, I would assume you love learning. And I've always consistently been learning different frameworks, different technologies. Some of the frameworks that helped me early in my career when I first joined with Capgemini was the rational unified process. Then after that, I became a huge agilist. I was scrum everything. I scrumified my life, Adam. Literally lived my life by a Kanban. I still use a Kanban today to drive all my own personal forward progress. But then beyond RUP and beyond Agile, a few other frameworks that I got into that really transformed the way I operate was one is called the Technology Business Management Framework, or TBM for short, and you can learn more about it at tbmcouncil.org. But it's a framework that ties in your general ledger, so all your basic spending in an organization with all the assets in the organization and including all your technology assets, and it ladders all of that up into technical services and ultimately to the business services that you're providing to your customers. So you can understand the total cost of basically any and everything, and then you can make data-driven decisions about your strategy going forward. That was huge. I learned that and I applied that first at Aflac, basically bringing transparency to 95% of our technology spend, and then use that data as well to help us drive multi-million-dollar transformations in our cloud spend, and then built a technology business management framework and organization for Anthem, the next company I went to, where it was used to manage $3 billion in technology spend. Very proud of that. And then, of course, use that as part of the framework for some of the success at R1. But I bring that up because frameworks, being curious, studying, like you said, working hard, you've got to be a continuous learner, and learning the frameworks that really drive you ahead are really, really important. And those were some.
Absolutely. I mean, and I find in my coaching that bringing frameworks to people, it's often one of those things that a lot of technologists, especially who haven't had a lot of leadership experience, haven't really been exposed to them or had much experience of them. And so therefore, that's the sort of the key part of the learning I often bring into the game is, hey, look, there is a framework that exists to help structure your approach through this, and learning those things, learning to apply them, sometimes learning by making a few mistakes. That's okay too. Can really move somebody forward, but really does bring you back to that very initial sale that you made. Like, I am the bridge between the business and the technology. I mean, that's very much what those ITBM and those ITSM is the one that I learned that's equivalent, kind of help you to do is to bridge that gap between the way that business works and the way that the technology teams work. So it's an interesting hark back there. But yeah, I mean, because like you, I was in consulting for a number of years as well, and I picked up a number of these frameworks, and the good old analyst 2x2, which is sort of a tool work you can use in almost all situations, So I think having frameworks is a great way to essentially to deliver on the the understanding that you've got from one side, the technology side, deep in the tech and the ways of working, and the way that the business works. Because of course, finance is the business of language in almost all cases. Yeah, sure, you got some domain specific language in certain verticals, but finance is kind of the universal language, and the frameworks really help that, well, to literally bridge the translation, don't they?
It really does. It really does. And there's a couple more frameworks I want to toss into this framework stew that we're discussing, right? And so, the next framework I want to, just introduce is, and you may say, hey, what's this about? But it's culture-based frameworks, right? So specifically one that I'm a huge proponent of is the Radical Candor framework by Kim Malone Scott. And Radical Candor and her subsequent work, Radical Respect, it's a feedback framework, because the thing about it is that when you're driving this much change throughout your career, and it doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor, if you're a people leader and you've got a team or teams that you're managing, or if you're a senior leader and you're driving an entire organization, it really doesn't matter. At all levels, you have to be able to effectively give and receive feedback. And you have to be able to do that in a timely manner and in the way that people understand, that ensures comprehension and engagement. If you fail at mastering the ability to give and receive feedback at all these different levels, there's no way. There's just no way you arrive where I've arrived. I would have absolutely failed were it not for that. So I'd be remiss not to mention that.
And that's a really, really good, it's a really good book that actually I thoroughly join you in recommending people read that one. But I think for me, the thing that stood out of the book is the ability to listen. I think a lot of us who are, trying to get towards leadership, we are very quick with our own opinions, ideas, our responses, our approach to certain things, but just stopping, take a step back and just listening first, getting that feedback. And then of course, soliciting feedback that you can then listen to and really engage with. I think we're all quite good at coming up with feedback. As you say, delivering it is another skill. Coming up with feedback, I don't think we're short on, but delivering it is definitely a skill. But listening, I think that's probably the single biggest difference between the really best leaders that I've come across and those who are still, aspiring to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the last framework that I fell in love with, which led to the birth of the framework that I'm ushering now with Hit Global, is the framework of design. We used to call it design thinking, Adam.
Yep.
Nowadays, we call it human-centered design, right? And my early days, when I first began to get introduced and then to fall in love with it, was when I was driving digital transformation at Aflac. I brought my teams into it. I had them learn it. It's something that Aflac took very seriously because they really wanted to focus on the customer experience. And so we literally had life-size posters of personas, different key individuals that were really critical in our value chain that we had throughout our buildings and everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to ingrain everybody in the journey. That ultimately led me to one day when I was interviewing with a company called IDEO. I had first known, they first came into my thinking when I was learning about design, but then I got to actually join the organization as a CIO, and then after a year made partner. And during that journey, design, just being immersed in that environment with all those creatives and innovators, it's amazing. And design gives you a language, gave me a language to articulate the values I've always had, which are people over process, people come first. And at the end of the day, you're always delivering to or on behalf of people.
Yeah.
And that is a really hard lesson, I think, sometimes for technologists to learn, but it's a very critical one to understand. Some people are gravitate towards technology because they feel that they are introverts, they want to get away from people, they want to stick to machines. But the truth about the matter is that it's never been more important, and it is a critical part of success to really know that you're in this for people, by people, you're delivering to people, and understanding people, aka empathy, and different things of that nature are absolutely critical to your success as a technologist.
So totally. I mean, I had a really pivotal experience actually for me. I was working at Palantir at the time, the defense tech firm. I was one of the first few employees in the UK, and so I was leading a training for some UK soldiers along with an analyst that was working with me, and the analyst was leading the training. And at some point through it, going through teaching them how to do various different aspects of the work in the software platform. And at some point he threw out a question which I just wasn't expecting at all. He said, "How do you all feel about this?" And I've never seen a room of soldiers change in quite the way they did. Suddenly they all sort of just relaxed a bit and just started talking about their experiences of it and how they actually, generally about how they felt about it. And it was one of those points where I sort of realized, the emotive and emotional side, behind the way that they use this technology, what it means for them. We spent maybe 5 minutes talking about that, and the rest of the training was an absolute dream. For me, that was one of those sort of pivotal moments of, okay, check out from the tech and the process and the workflow and the schedule to go through, and just check in with the people. I mean, have you had similar sort of, penny drop moments for you about when sort of the transformation on the personal level took place?
Yeah, I'll share an slightly embarrassing story. So I was leading a technology organization, and one of my teams had just developed a way for people to do self-service password reset using our IVR.
Right.
Now, everybody in technology knows that most organizations, passwords and resetting passwords is the bane of everybody's existence. Like, it always has a special place in your ticket queue, things of that nature, right? And then designing or making any changes, rolling out two-factor, multi-factor authentication, all of that's a bear, right? We get it. Now, we thought for sure at this particular organization, it was like 50% of the ticket queues were just password reset, like authentication issues. And so we thought for sure when we delivered this new self-service password reset that everything would smooth out. It would reduce the percentage from 50% to maybe 25%, maybe 20%. Adam, honestly, we rolled it out. Crickets. The numbers didn't shift, right? The numbers didn't shift at all. And then we had a huge campaign. We're telling everybody about it. Our CIO at the time is like, "Hey, have you delivered? What's happening with the password, the self-service password reset?" We're like, "No one's using it. We put it out there. The ticket queues aren't going down." So fast forward, I'm on a trip moving to a leadership offsite where we're doing our annual planning and strategy and all that stuff. And I land in Chicago. I'm at O'Hare Airport, and there is a major incident happening in my environment. My team's trying to get a hold of me, and I committed the unpardonable sin of allowing my password to expire.
Right. It happens. It happens to the best of us.
It happens to the best of us. It shouldn't have happened to me, but it happened. And I know exactly who to call to say, just fix it, right? But I'm like, no, I'm not going to press my easy button. I'm going to use the self-service password reset via the IVR that my team has been bandying about for the last 90 days. I log in, and it's like I'm going through the prompts one after another. And then after like prompt 10, I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, and I went ahead and called somebody, hit the easy button, and got my system access restored, and got into solving for the major incident that was underway. The reason I like sharing that story is because it wasn't the process that was poor. The process was designed perfectly for someone who's sitting at their desk in an office with the AC cranked on high and having no distractions, following the prompts. They could do it. But for someone who's living in the real world, like I was in that moment, moving out of the terminal, about to hit TSA security, trying to figure out how to solve for this while this major incident is happening, right? It was not convenient for me then. And this is what humanizing IT, this framework that I'm now advancing throughout North America, is all about. It's like taking in the experiences of all those around you, factoring those into the design and the delivery of IT products and services, so that we recognize that we don't live in a perfect, rigid, climate controlled environment. I can have a few kids screaming in the background. I could be in a hospital bed somewhere. Anything could be happening while I'm
Normally you've
engaged
got
with
your
my
boss screaming at you
technology.
when your password expires, so that you've got that pressure before anything else comes up anyway.
Absolutely. So, life is not static. Life is very dynamic. Things are always changing. So, in order to really design technology that actually serves people, you have to put people first and you have to put their experiences first and understand that and solve backwards from there.
That's a great piece of advice. I remember being told once a long time ago, if you want to really understand somebody, walk a mile in their shoes.
Exactly right.
Cool. So let's talk about your playlist then, because we've sort of skirted around the issue. We talked about a lot of the things that lead up to it, but let's talk about the human first playbook that you've come up with and literally go through them in order, because you've given a great set here. So
Sure.
I'll leave you to talk through it.
Okay. The first part of Playbook, Adam, is the first thing is experience is the North Star. Like, honestly, like map it, fill it, fix it. When you actually understand the human experience behind your technology, your teams, your users, your customers, your shareholders, every decision actually gets so much more clearer and you're able to make effective decisions. I like to think about it this way. Bad leaders manage tasks, right? But great leaders steward experiences.
Yeah, what you feel as you go through it.
Absolutely. The second part, part two of this is telling the story, and backing it with data. Unfortunately, as technologists, storytelling is not something that we're good at.
No, we rarely get exposed to it, do we?
We rarely do, but the most ingenious storytellers that we know of, the most famous technology leaders that we know of, like Steve Jobs, have always been really eloquent storytellers as well, right? And so it's an important part of the playbook. Facts win arguments, stories win hearts. The best technology leaders are myth makers and meaning makers. Data gives you your stories credibility, but the stories give you influence. And if you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand it well enough.
This is it. And I find a lot of engineering leaders start off with a discussion or approach that goes something along the lines of fact, logic, conclusion, right? And the answer is no, you lost me. You lost me at the very beginning bit. You didn't bring my heart along with it. You sort of won the argument, but lost the battle.
Exactly. I mean, it would serve us all to think about how would we explain something like a challenging subject to a child, our child, or our grandmother, or we need to like reframe it and think from a more human perspective to amplify the storytelling. The third element, Adam, in this playbook is empathy, right? I believe empathy is your edge. In an AI world, your greatest tech is still human.
Yeah.
Empathy isn't soft. It's your sharpest strategic tool. Understanding people better than anyone else, and you'll out innovate everyone else.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where if you can understand what somebody's feeling, if you can invoke a feeling in somebody else, if you can reflect a feeling that somebody else has, you're much more likely to be able to get to the bottom of what the challenge they're facing or get them to understand your perspective. Very powerful.
100%. The fourth part of playbook is owning the experience. So I like to say, own the experience, outsource the rest. Now, little challenging. People often reflexively push back from outsourcing, and I'm not saying outsourcing. I'm not necessarily recommending outsourcing. What I'm more recommending is understanding that you must prioritize and own the experience. You cannot outsource the experience. Never rent your soul. Services, fine, outsource them. Experiences, you've got to own them. No vendor will ever care about your customers like you do.
So what do you mean by never rent your soul? I mean, I can sort of understand it on the surface, but take us inside that phrase.
Yeah, so what I mean is, like, let's say, for example, you're the CTO of Marriott, right? Brilliant company, right? There are certain experiences for your customers that deepen their loyalty. When they first arrive and they check in, their ability to be able to get a digital key for the room, the ability for people to recognize, like, call them by their preferred name instead of their official government name, right? Like, there's so many little nuances that really make a person who's loyal to Marriott feel attached to the brand. Those experiences, you've got to have a bias towards owning them internally, having folks within your organization that own those moments that matter. Because if you just have third party suppliers managing those critical moments, and I'm not saying they can't be a part of the delivery, but actual ownership, right? It needs to be internal. You don't want to outsource those moments that matter.
Now I begin to get it. I mean, I was working with a CTO of a company that sold basically an API first service to other developers, and he was always talking about delivering features that were new capabilities, new endpoints, and so on. I said, what about the rest of the experience? And honestly, when I was trying to explain to him, he didn't get it. And what I did is I said, look, just go and have a look into Stripe, right? Stripe is the global payments processing company. Yeah. They have a culture where documentation is like king. If they don't have good documentation, then it isn't worth it. I mean, they're very much an API first service as well. Documentation is great. The way that they actually position and package everything is really good. There's really good metadata within their platform about how you take use of it. And I said to him, just go have a look at that, and just left him with that story of why people were so passionate about Stripe, this service. There's a reason why they grew so rapidly. And evidently there was one of those light bulb moments in the week intervening from when I spoke to him the first time and came up to the next time, because next time he was talking about, improving the experience, having a nice metadata dashboard and so on. It was one of those transformations. So yeah, that's what you mean. Don't rent out your soul. Own literally the experience of those people who use or take part in your product have.
100%. I mean, the one quick anecdote I'll share with you about that at my time at IDEO. So IDEO was a brilliant place to work at, but as a technologist, there were some challenges, right? And so what I mean is you're dealing with very intelligent, very innovative, very creative people who are like leading innovation for the top, most brilliant companies of the world. So when you say, hey, it's your CIO there, and you're anchoring your digital transformation. Typically, you would just say, hey, we need to replace our CRM. We've got a sales transformation to do, or we need to, change our ERP. We've got a workplace transformation to do, whatnot. It didn't work because terms like ERP, CRM, ITSM, those terms, their eyes just kind of glazed over, honestly, Adam. And they're like, wait, what? How's that related to blockchain? Is that connected to generative AI? Can you get augmented reality placed into there? And so I couldn't do a digital transformation based on technology. It wouldn't hold their attention. I couldn't do it based on business strategy because as they consult and they're always working on these most innovative business models, they kept changing their own business model. And so I was like, okay, I can't anchor on that either. So what I ended up doing is anchoring on the business experience. And so literally identify 3 core experiences: the employee experience in the moments that matter, the client experience in the moments that mattered there, and the delivery experience in the moments that mattered there. And by anchoring on those 3 core experiences, I was able to deliver fresh service. We didn't have ServiceNow money, but I was able to deliver fresh service, Workday, and HubSpot across Asia, Europe, and America in 24 months. That's my record. I've never gone that fast deploying enterprise solutions across multiple geographies like that ever in my career.
That's some epic change management.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's upgrading the experience of the way that people work, but also, by the sounds of it, very closely tied back to the previous point on storytelling.
100%. This is the beautiful thing about anchoring on experiences. It makes storytelling richer and easier to do. So it removes the friction from change management. It removes the friction from adoption. All of that, like, what's your why? Like Simon Sinek would say, it's in the experience. It's in there. And so if you understand that, it removes a lot of friction. You can go a lot faster and you can adapt a lot easier. Yeah, really powerful. And there's a 5th thing in the playbook, and this is not about technology, or maybe it is. I like to say go analog to stay human, right?
Okay.
Some people might say unplug, log off to level up, unplug, get bored, wander, take a stroll in the park. I'm in Georgia the last weekend. I was walking up Stone Mountain. It's important to put the digital devices aside and have moments where you're working with the world's greatest CPU ever, the human brain,
Yeah.
right? It's those moments of creativity that are fully analog that really create the environment, the rich environment for your best ideas, your best innovations. Because at the end of the day, in a world where AI is everywhere, I think human creativity becomes the most important capability we all have. And we've got to go analog in order to keep that creativity, feed that creativity, nurture that creativity, and have it as a competitive edge.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of technologists tend to think about creativity as something that the design team do or something that the graphic artists do. But reality is that creativity is being able to think laterally and connect the dots across streams and put together thoughts that otherwise don't necessarily logically fit until somebody's sort of put it together in front of you. And so I think that sort of creative moment, as you say, getting bored. I literally coached one of my CTOs to just go out and get bored recently. I asked him when was the last time he'd been bored, and he said, I said, yeah, the fact you've got to think about it that long tells me that you haven't had boredom in your life in a while. And I've also had this moment with my kids. I've got a 5-year-old, 6-year-old now, and I've realized that whenever he comes to me and says, Dad, I'm bored, I know I just have to watch and wait for a few minutes, because then after that moment, there's this sort of, natural motion that kicks in where he then gets creative and starts, I don't know, telling wonderful stories for himself out of boxes. It's one of the greatest gifts to kids is just a cardboard box. But the creativity comes straight out of that moment of boredom, literally straight on the back of the other side of it. It's so instant. It's amazing. And I sort of realized, well, if it happens that quickly with my son, imagine how quickly it happens with my brain, with all the experience that I've got. So I really love that one.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge, Adam. Absolutely huge. My daughter, going into summer, she was like, Dad, I'm bored. And I gave her some space. And what did her summer project evolve into? Like, I have a side project where I'm teaching her AI. But then beyond that, she started writing a book. I'm like, awesome. I mean,
Wow.
I didn't tell her to write a book, but like this is what happens in those spaces when we leave those spaces for a little bit of boredom.
Absolutely amazing. Cool. So let's summarize the human experience CTO playbook then. So we've got number 1, experience is the North Star, map it, feel it, fix it. We've got number 2, tell the story and back it with data. We said there that facts win arguments, but stories win the hearts. Number 3, empathy is your edge. I think in the AI world, your greatest tech is still human. I thoroughly believe that one. Really aligned on that one. Number 4, own the experience and outsource the rest. And then you had that wonderful phrase, never rent your soul. And number 5, go analog to stay human. Unplug, get bored, wander, and wonder.
That's right. Can't say anything better than that. And it's so important. Like, I honestly believe that any one of these elements of the playbook will do wonders for your career. All of them together will make you unstoppable. And ultimately, right, technology changes, but humans don't. If we design for human experiences, you will always lead from the front.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the greatest moments of human connection in technology leadership that I ever encountered was there's one CTO long time back that I was coaching him. And he was about to put somebody, an senior engineer of his on a PIP. He wasn't actually CTO at the time. He was founding engineer, and he had a senior developer who was about to put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, for anybody who's not familiar with that phrase. And I said, look, instead of going that radical step and going down the framework, literally, I used the word unplug. I said, just take him out for a beer instead. That one conversation changed significantly. 6 months later, they were this sort of Batman and Robin of the company, the CTO and VP engineering. So sometimes just a simple, straightforward human connection, it is the actual, most impressive edge that you can have. I totally get you on that one.
Absolutely. 100%.
Wes, it's been wonderful chatting to you today. I'm sure we could probably talk for hours, but how can people get hold of you if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Yeah, so excellent. The easiest way for people to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. It's just that Wesley Eugene. That's WesleyEugene. Search me on LinkedIn. I'll come right up. Send me a connection request. I'd love to talk to you. You can book time with me there. And I invite everyone to join this experience revolution. Like, if you want to learn how to lead with empathy, design, and storytelling at the core of what you do, definitely let's connect. Because this humanizing IT movement, it's really training, it's certifying and coaching, but it's really driving all of this change across the next generation of human first tech leaders. And it's a deeply personal cause for me as well.
And just in case somebody didn't make the direct connection, HIT Global, HIT stands for Humanizing IT, right?
That's right. HIT stands for Humanizing IT. There's not an MMA company. It's a human-centered company.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Wes, it's been great speaking to you. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Adam. I love the conversation.
Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate your time. So just before you go, I'd like to ask you for a favor in return for putting together this episode of the CTO Playbook for you. Please share the episode with just one person who will appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or another platform, sharing the episode will help more CTOs find the podcast and enable me to create more great content. Remember that you can find more information on the CTOplaybook.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the CTO Playbook.